Blizzard's most recent patch has given us a ton of changes and bug fixes for the most broken tank of them all, Reinhardt, which should see him see a lot more play from here on out. He's definitely not going to be in the position that he was before the dive meta, where he was consistently played like permanently, but he's definitely going to be viable on certain maps against certain team comps. So the changes in general that are going to make him a more viable pick are things like his hammer hitbox being fixed, his fire strike hitbox being fixed, and his charge hitbox being fixed. Those three are the most important things that have changed in this patch. So your charge is now more reliably going to be actually hitting the target that you're charging at and kind of vacuuming them into you. And it's also still going to reliably knock people away as you're going past them. It's also now been fixed so that you can actually charge upstairs properly. There used to be issues like on on First Point Hollywood, where you couldn't charge up into the house on point. You couldn't charge up those stairs, and on like Dorado First, from the attacker's perspective, you couldn't charge up that little staircase on the right side. So those things, staircases like that, have been fixed, which is going to help a lot with Reinhardt and playing aggressive. The fire strike hitbox is big because that means it's going to be a lot easier to build your ultimate now, as long as your fire strike game is quite good. It's going to consistently connect with whoever you're fire striking, and obviously with the Zarya shield changes, you don't need to be too worried about hitting your fire strikes on the enemy Zarya, as long as your team also aren't hitting them, because it's only like 20 charge. So if you waste a shield on that, that's fine for you. That means that opens up the aggression for you. The swing hitbox and swing speed is really big as well. So obviously they've given a 10% speed increase on the hammer swings. So getting in the face of an enemy is a lot more aggressive. So like it's really important that you play around corners and walls so that you can get all those swings in, because you're going to be getting a lot more swings in than you would previously. So let's talk about when you can and can't play Reinhardt. Mostly I'd recommend playing Reinhardt. Obviously Reinhardt into Reinhardt is a perfectly fine kind of fight to take. If the enemy team tend to have a lot of hit scan, or heroes that don't have too much mobility, I'd recommend picking Reinhardt there, because you can kind of just get in their face and create a lot of space for your own team by using the shield to your advantage. Obviously as well, if your team has a lot of hit scan heroes or heroes that need space, I'd recommend picking Reinhardt, because as Winston, if you're running like a McCree soldier, there's not really too much you're going to be able to do. You need to kind of be in front of them and be their front line so that they can walk forward with you and get as much damage out as possible. Whereas if you're Winston, you're not going to be with them at all. Really. You don't want to be picking Reinhardt into dive comp still, unless it's really closed off maps. Like you can get away with it on like King's Row, because the map is fairly narrow and a lot of your swings are going to connect with the enemy team when they're diving in anyway. But you're still going to have issues probably with your ult, because obviously don't forget that the ult is still the old ult where you can't ult people on top of the payload, you can't ult people that are slightly above ground, that sort of stuff. So Genji's going to be difficult to ult, Winston's can outplay your ult really easily, that sort of stuff. So you need to be really careful with your ult still. The reason I mentioned that, and it's important to know, is because obviously if the enemy Genji is ulting in onto your team, so generally what will happen if the enemy team are running Ana Genji is, as a good Reinhardt will hear the enemy Genji taking his blade out, then he'll turn around immediately and ult towards his team, because that's normally where the Genji's going to dash. A good Genji will dash slightly upwards on the second dash, just so he's slightly above the ground, and your ult won't connect. So you need to be a lot more careful into that sort of comp. Although it says in the patch notes that charging has been fixed, it's still not 100% reliable. I've had issues where I've actually gone through certain targets that have effects on them. So for example, they've been shielded by a Zarya, or they've been ana-ulted. I'm either going through them, or like the Zarya shield is creating the charge to fail and just get stunned myself. So the charge still isn't 100% reliable, however it is definitely in a better place than it was before, outside of those two things. So generally these changes are going to be good for the game. Not only the changes to Reinhardt, but obviously the changes to Zarya as well. Zarya and Reinhardt are probably one of the best tank duos in the game, so because Zarya is good again, Reinhardt's going to be good again. Even with the release of like Doomfist, who also synergizes really well with Zarya, I think it's going to mess up the meta a little bit, and we're going to see a little less dive play. Dive meta is still going to be there, definitely, because Doomfist, Winston, Zarya, Tracer or Genji is still a super strong comp. Does a lot more damage than the previous dive meta did. Obviously with Doomfist's ability to one-shot people every 4 seconds.